Do you have high opinion of your opinions?
I think it's more like a fantasy that comes out, maybe not very consciously, maybe I'm not very well aware of it. Um, but I've never thought of it seriously. I've never thought that I was able to inspire people or lead somebody. It's just when I get this feedback from others, I start thinking, oh wow, so like, am I like that? Should I be like that? Should I change it?
So you were telling me a bit about about the labels you put on yourself. For instance, um, that you are an extroverted person.
Yeah, I think that's true. If we have to label ourselves, if I have to make that choice, I would definitely say I'm an extrovert.
And what does that mean?
Well, of course, there are different definitions, and people understand very different things, when they think about introverts and extroverts. But I would say, first of all, that I'm the kind of person who mainly draws energy from socializing and meeting other people. So if I stay alone for too long at home, I feel exhausted. I don't feel replenished. So, like mm, like even when I'm physically tired after a long working day, it really helps me to go out and talk to, and that's very important, not just to anyone, but it has to be some friend, somebody I can actually confide in or talk about serious stuff. So definitely not random meetings with just people I don't know. That would feed my battery.
Yeah. Do you think you're like better at speaking to people because of that? Like you become more of a likable person because you like rely on that throughout your life?
I don't know. I mean, in my case, it's partly professional because I learned to talk to people through, my job. I work as a language teacher, so I have to be able, to talk to people. I have to make them talk as well. But yeah, I guess it's part of that personality as well.
Also, you were recently called a leader, and that surprised you, right?
It did, yeah. It was a shocking revelation, really, because it came up in my, heart to heart conversation with a very close friend, and it was like half a year ago. He just looked at me and said, "Well, I've always, seen you as somebody who is a leader, who has this leader personality. He says, I'm very happy that, when we go out, you choose the place we're going to hang out in, you choose what we're going to do, and I'm perfectly happy to follow." It was absolutely shocking to me because I'd never thought that it's actually something that, one, I could do, I could be good at, two, something that other people value and appreciate. Before that, the only time, the closest I came to it was when I did my CELTA, my teaching course, and when tutors evaluated how you manage the classroom, I was told like, oh, your classroom management is quite good, and I thought, wow, I can manage students, okay, great, but it was very very narrow professional thing. When it comes to other life situations, yeah, it was very shocking for me to hear that.
How did you become that like that? And also, how did you become like that and not know it, not notice?
I don't know. That's the thing. I'm trying to find out how it happened because, to give you some cultural context, in Russia, it is generally frowned upon if you show too much initiative, if you take the lead. People generally do not like that. The general consensus is that it's better not to stick out, to keep down low, not to show off. Such people are generally, like I said, frowned upon, despised even. So maybe, okay, with my background, I didn't really, have any opportunity or even thought that, oh, I might be something like that. I still don't know what it means because you know, okay, in my job as a teacher, I can be the leader, but obviously because people come to me because they want to learn something, so I have to guide and show them the way. It's just there. When it comes to my personal life, I don't know, it's surprising. And I've been told the same about my relationships, for example, with my boyfriend. I've been told that, well, it's quite obvious that you are the leader in your relationship. And I was like, how?
But you also said you generally date people who are younger than you, right?
That's not always true.
Okay.
I mean, not currently, for example. We are the same age. But yeah, I did. But yeah, that's not a rule, I'd say.
Does that have something to do with leadership, though?
It might be. I mean, it might be some kind of subconscious desire, to take the lead, to guide or to teach the partner. Yeah.
Can you think of like times or people that are leaders to you? Times where you were led by people, other than when you were a child, or
see that's good, right? Because I always, why the reason it was so surprising for me to hear what my friend said, that he was perfectly happy with me taking the leadership and following, is I don't think I'd be as comfortable and as happy as he was in that situation, because I'm not a huge fan of following other people. So for somebody to be a real leader for me, they have to have this they have to have authority in my eyes, and I'm so critical about that. But I do remember, for example, maybe not a leader, but a mentor. When I did my volunteering in Sweden, I worked with one guy from the Netherlands who started working there later than I did, and he was older than me. He is older than me, right, a bit, and super intelligent person, who moved to Sweden from the Netherlands, looking for a better life. And he's a university professor of history and so on. And talking to him really made me feel like he could be my mentor, because he really inspired me, and he really gave me lots of good advice, so on. Yeah, it was probably the last example I can remember.
Interesting. Do you try to inspire people or lead people, or do you have a high opinion of your opinions?
I think it's more like a fantasy that comes out, maybe not very consciously, maybe I'm not very well aware of it. But I've never thought of it seriously. I've never thought that I was able to inspire people or lead somebody. It's just when I get this feedback from others, I start thinking, oh wow, so like, am I like that? Should I be like that? Should I change it? I mean, so far it's been on a very, very basic level, like going out, meeting with friends. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? Anton's going to decide, obviously. It's very basic.
So, like, you're also interested in certain star sign stuff and I don't know how to call it, and maybe personality stuff as like tools to help you reflect on yourself and have conversations, and you find it very interesting, and you were interested in that before, and nothing like a leader ever came up.
I guess I guess it's my blind spot or something. Maybe I just didn't think of it. I am interested in astrology, and personality types, but I don't take that thing very seriously, so I see it mostly as a system that, as a theory that can help you understand yourself better and other people better. But I mean, okay, my son is Sagittarius. Sagittarius people are generally, meant to be leaders. I just never took it seriously. I thought, like, who am I to claim that,
I understand. Yeah. And also, speaking of like learning about yourself, at a certain point, you're 36 and you recently learned something about yourself. If you were like 26 and someone told you that you're going to learn a lot more about yourself, would you have been like totally on board with that, or would you have not really bought it?
I would probably have been surprised, of course. Yeah. When I was 20 something, of course I thought that, by the time I reach 30, I'll be pretty much settled, like I'll know everything there is to know. I'll have a clear picture of my life, where I'm moving. But here I am, still learning about myself. I think that's great. I mean, I have no complaints. No regrets.
Do you ever like? This is kind of a question about like just about like aging.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever forget things in the sense that like people talk about learning their whole life? Do you ever like realize that you used to know something when you were like 26 that you don't know anymore? I mean, people talk about forgetting languages because they like, become less used and so on. But like, I mean, do we kind of replace our knowledge in your experience with new stuff, or does it just like stack?
Well, I think there are different layers of memory, and just like with language, certainly if you learned a language before and you stopped using it for a while, you won't completely forget it. It will just go sort of back in your memory to some far corner, from where you can easily take it out and bring it back again. Because that happens to me every time I meet my Swedish friends, which is not very often, like let's say once a year. I don't use Swedish, obviously, living in Turkey. There is no one to talk in Swedish to, and I may watch some films or some shows, but listening is not the same as speaking. So whenever my friends come, it takes me, like, on average, it takes me 3 days, to stop stumbling and trying to find words. 3 days of speaking practice, I feel like, okay, I'm back again. I can speak fluently without stumbling and checking words in dictionary and so on. Same with, so yeah, it really depends on what you mean. I think especially if we talk about skills such as, because language is a skill, or like riding a bicycle. I learned to ride a bicycle when I was like 12, 11, and then there was a long period of my life without any bicycles at all, and then suddenly at the age of 27 I started doing it again. You remember it, your body remembers it after a while. So I didn't have to learn anew. It's it just comes back to you.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump back to another conversation we were having. So we already talked about how personality changes as we travel, as we live in different places. And you also talked a bit about like what kind of personality you have in relation to your boyfriends, what kind of personality, who you are in a relationship. How much does your personality change from relationship to relationship?
I don't think my personality changes that much just because I'm in a different relationship, but I do think that we grow and develop as people, and it really baffles me when people assume that there should be some kind of, you should have some kind of personality that's set in stone, like you should find yourself at a certain point and like there will be no growth, no development after that. But why would anybody say that? I'm not a different person because I'm with a different partner. I'm a different person because I'm older, and it's a different person, different situation, different life, different experience, so many things. So of course there is some core that might not change that easily, but other things they do. And of course, okay, you have to keep an open mind, most likely. I mean, it might be that some people really do not change no matter what, no matter who they're with. I don't know. I'm not like that. I don't really believe in it.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm gonna jump to another question. I'm really jumping all over the place. Maybe we'll dig into something, but I'm just thinking about gay identity again, and I'm wondering. I've always been curious about the relationship between sexuality and gender. So like, there's a lot of like stereotypes of what is masculine, what is it like to be a man, what a man should be, and then like what is feminine, and how much does, like, especially because you know yourself, but you know so many other gay men, how much, like, does masculinity play a role in the life of a gay man, and femininity? Or are these things connected? Like, because often you associate like gay men with being more feminine than other men or straight men, right? And that's just like, I don't know, an open-ended question.
Well, I mean, when it comes to masculinity and femininity, in my opinion, it's all based in the culture, in the background, in our upbringing. Certainly, standards and ideas of what is considered masculine and what is considered feminine are very similar across cultures, but yet not entirely similar. And I really don't know. I generally haven't thought much about it, because I don't. When I fully came out to myself, when I fully realized, that I was gay, and even by saying that, I'm putting, quite a certain label, which is absolutely 100% my conscious choice to use that label. That is not to say that, I'm not open to, having a romantic or sexual relationship with anybody else other than my gender. I don't think so. I think I'm perfectly open to that. But for simplicity, I choose, that label because it's easier, to talk about something then. When it comes to feminine, masculine, I really don't know. I just guess I'm not that much concerned about it. Because there is so much stereotyping. There's so much. You can see it in the gay culture as well, where people, say like, oh, because we're gay, we're so much better than, straight people, because we combine, the both sides, best of the both worlds, which I think is, honestly, debatable. Yeah. Similarly, I don't see a direct correlation between those two things, because I've known people who were perfectly heterosexual and yet, exposed, shown traits of, what's considered the opposite gender. So I've known some quite feminine guys who were perfectly straight, and the opposite, quite masculine girls who were perfectly straight as well. So yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So not exactly a label you put on yourself, but a conversation we had was that you noticed that I put a lot of value on ethics. Like, it's something that's on my mind. It's something I use to make decisions. And you said, I'm not so interested. I'm not so concerned with ethics. And I think that, like, you still somehow come out appearing to me like a good person in my mind, like a nice person, a person I want to spend time around. And so I think you have some values that you strive for. Like, some days you probably wake up and I think, like, today you consider yourself a lazy piece of shit.
Yeah, I do.
So what are you, like, striving for? What makes you not a good person, because that's so ethically mingled, but rather, what, lack of a better word, like, just a person that you think that you're happy to be versus not happy to be?
That's a really very serious question. And the reason why I say things like I have no ethical concerns or I disregard ethics is mostly because, I believe that most ethical systems, have their base in religion. So they all come from religious things, because that's how it has been, that's how it was for hundreds of years at least. People, whenever there was an ethical question, people referred to, to God, to the church, or to imams, like whatever religion you have, and there was the answer. And so religion is not something, again, I'm not a religious person, and I am very skeptical about especially monotheist religions. So that's why I say it. I think I do have some kind of system of principles, and I must have some kind of ethics. But what it's based on is, another tricky question. I also don't like labels such as, good and bad person. Some of people I know use them all the time, and I always question, what does it mean? What do you mean by that, by being a good person? Because very often it is used to justify some inappropriate behavior.
Yeah. So you are basically, you have a bad connotation with ethics and with these words, good or bad person. You didn't say you have a bad connotation. Well, yeah, you said you have a bad connotation. So what is the alternative? Like, yeah.
I think I always, ask myself the question, why? So, okay, let's take, for example, if you think about Christian ethics, which, all ends up in the notion of sin, and sin is something that is, not supposed to be done because it's not supposed to be done. That's like the ultimate concept. And I always ask the question, why? If somebody tells me, for example, I wouldn't do that because I don't think that's right, I want to ask, okay, why? Like, based on what? On what grounds? And I keep on asking myself those questions, of course, as well. To me, I think, we might not be that different, actually. I mean, because I do care about people I care about. I do care about people who are close to me. I don't want to hurt them, and I do consider what I'm going to say, what I'm going to do, and how it will affect them. However, I think that my problem is that there is this little part of me which is, which always keeps on, challenging myself and others. And it keeps on telling me, okay, but what if you did that? What exactly would happen? Like, how bad would it be? Like, and why do you assume that just by doing something or saying something you can actually offend this person or someone? And I think, this is another side of ethics, another side of people who see themselves as, righteous, moral or ethical people, is that, it's so preposterous, it's like, because it's based on the assumption that you actually have the power to hurt somebody. What if you don't?
Oh, interesting question. Yeah, I mean, then you're kind of like, if I was to like run with that, maybe look into that, I would think, oh, so you're almost kind of valuing humbleness. Like, someone could take that the wrong way and be like, oh, you think that you're so great that you can hurt somebody. Calm down, come from your high horse. And you're almost, you could be, I don't know if that's what you meant, putting some moral judgment on.
That's a very good point. Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah, actually. I don't know.
Maybe. I just think that, we really need to ask ourselves, why and what for. Those two most important questions we should be asking ourselves every time. So let's say, for example, okay, let's take an example. Say, me or somebody else was told a secret, right? And then you have this question of whether it's right or wrong, whether you should or shouldn't, spill the secret. I would definitely, take one step further and think about, okay, so why? Like, why would it be a problem to share this? What are the potential consequences of that action? So, and then, if you have a very definite answer to that, and that answer can also be based, in yourself. It can also be, it's because I think that this is right or wrong. I think it could be this. Or that answer could be based on somebody else because I think that, this person will be hurt, or I think it can actually, damage somebody. So that's a very important question. As long as it doesn't stop you from thinking, because very often I've seen examples that people use ethics and their moral principles as an excuse to not reflect on things, to not think about them.
Yeah, like somebody I know was wanting to gossip less, and so they they basically, whenever they are talking about someone else, they're like, oh, I shouldn't do that, I have a problem with gossiping. And I'm like, well, actually, there's nothing wrong with saying that thing. You should just talk. But they have this rule that goes a little bit too far, right? So you're a little bit more in touch with, like, asking the question, but I'm the same. Like, I'm not gonna, like, impose, like, you used the word principled, and that kind of sounded Russian to me.
It is.
Yeah, because I wouldn't consider myself principled. I would just try to consider myself trying to do the right thing. Like, I'm not interested in principles. I'm interested in, like, dynamic decision making, which is basically what you're describing.
Makes sense. Yeah, you're right. Principled sounds a bit like dogmatic. Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe we're not that different. In the end, we're just, approaching, the same topic from, opposite ends.
Yeah, using just different words.
Maybe.
I mean, or maybe we just have different ethics, and that's the problem. Like, because you noticed me doing something that maybe you wouldn't have done, and therefore you're like, oh, you care about this. But yeah, it sounds to me like you do kind of care.
I think that, okay, if we take another example, let's say, there is a person in your life that you love, and you don't want to hurt them. And so if you make decisions based on that, you say, like, well, I'm not going to do that to that person, or I'm not going to say that to that person because I don't want to hurt them. It's focused on you. Why? The answer to the question why is because I love them. So it's something that I don't want to do for myself. So, in some ways, like I've been, it's some kind of, radical egotism, in a way, which I sometimes believe in.
But that's just kind of a negative perspective, or at least a perspective. Like, because when I do something for someone I love, I think there's a little bit of, I think there's both. There's wanting to do it for yourself, and there's wanting to do it for them, I think.
Yeah.
Unless you believe that everything everyone does is just for oneself. Like, even if you help a whale in the ocean, some people would say, oh, you're only doing that to make yourself feel better about yourself, or because you personally like doing that, But that's just one perspective that I think has to be argued for, like you can't prove that.
And that's a tough one because, a whale in the ocean will not give you any feedback, right? There is no possibility, but when we deal with humans, we actually have that, because, whether you did something morally right or morally wrong, you can potentially get feedback from that person saying, what you did was the right thing, or no, like you did the absolute opposite of what should have been done, so it's a tricky world, morals and ethics, really, tricky. I can, just give some kind of general thoughts about, everything we talked about. Like,
do you feel like you have something interesting to say about that? I just don't know.
What do you mean?
I don't know if you mean like, I could do this if you want me to, and then
there we go.
Doing it more.
There we go. See, that's an ethical problem, right? It's like thinking about who's got the responsibility. Am I imposing on somebody or not right now? This is why the situation is so tricky. We're just this is an ethical question, really. Are you forcing me to come up with new topics, or am I trying to impose my thoughts on you?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting, because in social situations, often it's like, if someone gives you a compliment, it really matters whether you gave them a compliment first, like all that context. Because sometimes you just get a compliment because people feel like they have to.
Yeah.
And other times, you feel like you don't need to give a compliment because you guys are both on the same page so much that it's like totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when that comes to the topic of politeness, and all the niceties in society, I genuinely think that those things are important as social rituals, as, a mechanism of, sort of building up social contacts. But in close relationships, I don't think it's necessary. And I've had arguments with people about that. I've had arguments with people I had close relationships with who were very upset if, I I didn't show enough niceties. I didn't give compliments. I didn't say, oh, thank you, you're welcome all the time, because for them it was very important. But I thought, no, this is exactly what we should shed off, because now we're in a close relationship. We don't have to do that anymore. Now we know each other, so we can move on past that. But,
yeah. Sure.
different.
Yeah. Last week there was a girl who thought, oh, you did this to us, up to a friend. You're so annoying, you always fuck it up. And I was like, no, actually, that was me. And she was like, oh no, I didn't mean it. Because of course we didn't know each other as well. And I was like, oh yeah, because we don't know each other, you can't get mad at me.
Exactly. It's so well done. I mean, you easily shifted, eased up the situation.
Yeah. It was funny.
That works well.
Yeah, I think that's we'll wrap it up then.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna say, that many of the things we've talked about, maybe I'm gonna repeat myself, but it's not something that's set in stone for me. It's not something that is defined once and for all. I'm really in a process of discovery. And yes, it does amaze me myself that, at this age of 36, I'm still discovering and learning new things about myself. And maybe it's just the time in my life right now. But, we talked about the concept of home, national identity, gender, sexuality, relationship, many things. And, everything I said is just basically, what I'm thinking right now. And if I didn't manage to express my thoughts very clearly, it's because I'm still learning, I'm still discovering. And I think that's, quite happy with that,
Yeah, that's really cool. I think for sure you will go away from this and you'll be like, you'll remember what you said.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, I didn't mean it just like that. Especially if you watch the episode, because, I mean, that's just what happens, But that's a good sign, I think.
There's a French word for that.
Yeah.
It's called l'esprit de l'escalier. It's that the spirit of the stairs, when you go down the stairs after a party and then you remember what you should have said.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow. Well, on that note, let's enter. Let's go down the.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.